Let's take that question to Jonathan Schanzer. He's the Senior Vice President for Research at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Jonathan, Israel and Iran should make a deal. They should make peace. What do you make of President Trump's statement?
Well, I think that probably sounds a bit simplistic given where we are right now. I think there can be terms for an end of conflict, but those terms, I am not sure that the Iranian regime will comply, right? I mean, I think there are two things primarily that the Israelis are going to ask for. One is a complete cessation of the nuclear program. Much of it has been destroyed already, and many of those nuclear scientists, we hear up to 14 of them, have been killed in Iran. A number of senior officials from the Iranian nuclear program have also been killed. IRGC officials have been targeted throughout Iran. So the personnel is dwindling. On top of that, you have a number of nuclear sites that have been destroyed. However, we still have enriched uranium in Isfahan, and there is still that facility that is embedded deep inside of a mountain at the facility at Fordo. That would all need to be settled in a deal. I can't imagine that the Iranians would want to make that deal very quickly, but I think that's one part of it, and that's complicated enough. The other part of this, of course, is that Iran would need to cease all of its proxy activities against Israel. Now, I will say right now the Israelis have more leverage than they ever have against the Iranians because they have just been going at it in Iran now for nearly 3 days straight, one wave after another of Israeli Air Force attacks. They have destroyed political targets, military targets, nuclear targets, economic targets. The Iranians have no air defenses right now. The only thing that they have is the ability to fire those ballistic missiles, which of course have done some damage in Israel, but I think there is a determination among the Israelis that they will do this to the end, and I think that's their message. So this is probably the moment of leverage if Trump is ever going to have it, but I think we all need to be clear. This would not be an easy negotiation. And the question, I suppose, right now is, could you call for a ceasefire while negotiations occur? I don't know. Let's see if the deal maker in chief is able to do so.
Right, and we know, of course, Israel began by targeting military IRGC personnel. Then they moved on to the nuclear facilities. They're now targeting oil infrastructure in Iran. That will have a knock-on effect on oil prices, is already having a knock-on effect on oil prices. Do you think President Trump will feel the political pressure there and will feel under pressure to rein Israel in?
Well, I think he's already feeling it from some within his party. There are, of course, schisms right now that exist within MAGA world, as we would call it. There are the internationalists on the one side, there are the isolationists on the other. The isolationists are basically saying the United States has no business helping Israel or getting involved in this conflict in any way. I think those are the same people that would probably tell the president to rein in Israel because of the spike in oil prices. Although I have to say, when I talk to experts on oil markets, they're not that concerned about Iran because a lot of that oil has been off limits. Yes, they've been trading oil on the black market, and it is certainly helping the supply, but this is not a massive amount. I think right now it's psychological shocks, so it may actually begin to subside over the course of a couple of days, and the markets will probably get used to it. But I can imagine that this will not go unnoticed by the president.
Right, and there are concerns, of course, about American assets in the region. The United States is moving more military assets to the eastern Mediterranean. Concerns, perhaps, of an Iranian attack on the American embassy in Iraq, other possible targets like that. Is that something that will be looming large in the minds of President Trump right now?
Well, it was actually the first thing that happened. I mean, before this attack that was launched by the Israelis, before that even occurred, we were watching the United States begin to move assets out of the region, which, by the way, I think obviously raises some interesting questions about what the United States what the Trump administration knew in advance of this attack, whether there was any coordination. Of course, Trump denies that, but there was clearly advance warning. And of course, we know that the United States and perhaps others are shooting down some of these Iranian missiles before they get to Israeli airspace. But I think that the president knew that going in. I think he was aware of the threats to the region. But by the way, let's also be realistic. The Iranians have been shooting at Iraqi bases, American bases in Iraq, American bases in Jordan, and elsewhere around the region. They, in fact, killed 3 American servicemen by way of proxy. proxy back in February of last year. So it's not like the Iranians haven't done this before, and it was not due to an Israeli operation against Iran. So I think the president probably has a pretty good idea of who he's dealing with. If the Iranians tried to drag in the United States by attacking, I think it would be a huge mistake. And I think what would happen is right now the Iranians, at least in some way, have a portion of the president's base on their side, the isolationists. I think they would lose that support very rapidly if they attacked an American base.
Oh, and Jonathan, we've just got some comments right now from President Trump, who's speaking to ABC News in the US. He says the United States could become involved in the ongoing conflict, though it is not currently participating. There's certainly a lot of ambiguity coming from the White House.
Yeah, and I think, there is a question, if what they're concerned about primarily is how much munitions they're going to spend, by supporting Israel. And by the way, they are already doing so by shooting off these THAAD interceptors that have been based in Israel. These cost as much as $15 million a pop. There, I think, does come a question of how many of those do you want to spend? How many of them do you want to draw down? Before you begin to realize that one large, massive ordnance penetrator on Fordo could potentially end this. In other words, once the Iranians see that the U.S. is willing to do one thing, and one thing only, that could be the moment that that the Iranian regime says, uncle, and they come back to the table knowing that their nuclear program is destroyed, knowing that they have played their last card. But I will say already that there is already a significant amount of pressure. The Israelis have done the vast majority of the work. The U.S. coming in would probably just be sort of batting cleanup here. This would be the final straw with the regime once they understood that, with the U.S. in, there's zero chance of winning. But by the way, if you have already lost all of your air defenses, the Israelis have complete freedom of action in Iran, you've probably lost the war already. The only card they have are those ballistic missiles, which continue to terrorize Israelis at night.
Jonathan, thank you so much. Jonathan Schanzer there at the FDD. Great to talk to you.